Praveen, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm there. I'm waiting. We are waiting for Prakash Chauhan, sir, our president, ISRS. So, sir, uh, is on actually. He has to catch the flight. So he told that he will be joining in the initial part today.
Okay. Uh,
Yes,
Praveen,
sir has joined.
is my
Sir has joined.
is my okay? Is my
Yeah,
camera
Praveen.
working?
Uh, Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Praveen. Good afternoon, Poonam. Uh, I am here at Goa Airport, so I am able to connect. Hope you can hear me and see
Yes,
me
sir.
also. I
Yes,
think
sir.
good afternoon, Dr. Shubha. Thank you very much for joining. We
Good
cannot see.
afternoon.
We cannot see you. If you can fix your camera, I think that should be fine.
Okay, all right. I think I'll look into that. I thought that's what I was asking Praveen when you joined. Let me look into that. Thanks.
So, Praveen, you can inform Madam that the other participants are joining from our YouTube channel and then other social media feeds.
Yes. Dr. Shubha, we are live, I think, in YouTube now, and we have shared the link of today's popular talk to more than 6,000 members of Indian Society of Remote Sensing. And while we start this program and fix the camera, so I welcome all our esteemed members of Indian Society of Remote Sensing and our dynamic president, Dr. Prakash Chauhan ji, and our treasurer, Miss Dr. Poonam, ma'am. And yes, ma'am, now visible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, on the occasion of National Science Day, which we celebrate for the discovery of Raman effect by Sir C.V. Raman on this date in 1928, India celebrates National Science Day. And our society, Indian Society of Remote Sensing, one of the oldest and the largest scientific society in India, established in 1966, has more than 6,000 members. And we also publish one of the top ranked Indian journals known as Journal of Indian Society of Remote Sensing. So, to celebrate this important day on the guidance of our President Prakash Chauhan sir, this lecture is being organized on this topic of ocean color from space, some global and Indian perspective. So, I request Prakash Chauhan sir to say a few words before we start the talk.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen, for setting the tone for today's function. And at the outset, let me congratulate and to all the scientific fraternity and all the members of Indian Society of Remote Sensing on the occasion of National Science Day, which basically is celebrated in India on 28th of February to celebrate the discovery of Raman effect by Sir C.V. Raman. And as many of you are aware, the most important discovery of Raman effect was done by Sir C.V. Raman while he was in ocean traveling, long distance sea cruise from India to UK. And there, all these ideas related to scattering of light by the ocean water came, and then this became famous Raman effect. So to commemorate that occasion, today we thought that it is very apt to have a topic which is very closely linked with the color of the sea and how today's satellite technology is seeing, the variations of these colors using imaging spectroscopy and reflectance spectroscopic techniques from space. And I'm very glad to say that we have among us a very prominent personality, Professor Shubha Sathyendranath, an eminent scientist and who has done lead work for more than 4 decades in understanding the ocean color, its variability, and associating it with phytoplankton production and higher level productivity in the global oceans. We welcome you, Professor Shubha Sathyendranath, to this function. And I'm sure that today's talk by her on the topic of ocean color from space, some global and Indian perspective, will be a true tribute to the National Science Day and definitely will be well taken by Indian Society of Remote Sensing, members, as well as the remote sensing fraternity in India. So once again, I would like to thank you, madam, for accepting our invitation, and we are looking forward for your presentation, and I'm sure that all of us will get enlightened by your 1 hour deliberations on this topic. Thank you very much for joining. Over to you, Praveen, for introduction of the
Thank you.
guest
Thank
for
you.
today.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request Poonam madam to give a brief introduction of our esteemed speaker, Professor Shubha Sathyendranath ji. Poonam madam.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen. So on this occasion, it is my privilege to introduce our speaker to all the audience. Dr. Shubha Sathyendranath ji is a highly respected merit scientist at Plymouth Marine Laboratory, where she is part of remote sensing team. Her work is focused on ocean color modeling, spectral characteristics of light penetration underwater, biooptical properties of phytoplankton, modeling primary production, biogeochemical cycles in the sea, climate change, waterborne diseases, biological physical interactions in the marine system, ecological provinces in the sea, ecological indicators, and phytoplankton functional types. Having worked at PML since 2006, the part funded by National Center for Earth Observation, she has created significant impact on many aspects of biological oceanography and was one of the first oceanographers to see the potential of ocean color satellite observations to study various aspects of biological oceanography at both global and regional scales. In the year 2021, she was awarded the A.G. Hunstman Medal in recognition of her research achievements in the development of the use of optics and satellites in marine science. In the year 2022, she was awarded Knight of the Order of Cultural Merit, the fourth highest order of the Principality of Monaco, awarded to those who have made distinctive contributions to the arts, letters, or science through their work or teachings. In the year 2023, Dr. Shubha Sathyendranath was appointed member of the Order of British Empire in the King's Birthday Honours, which marks the extraordinary contributions and service of people across the UK. So without wasting much time now, I invite Dr. Sathyendranath to deliver her talk on the topic Ocean Color from Space, the Global and Indian Perspective. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Poonam and Prakash and Praveen for all your kind words, and also for giving me this opportunity to speak on this very important occasion of the Indian National Science Day, recognizing and remembering the contribution of Sir C.V. Raman to our field of research. So the topic of my talk today is about the color of water. It is an everyday observation that if you look at water in different locations and in different places, the color appears to change. So what we are interested in looking at is what are the agents responsible for these changes. Then can we quantify the agents that are causing the color to change? And if we can do all that, why does it matter? Why should we care about the color of the oceans? Now, we have, as a humanity, we have had a long-lasting fascination with ocean color. Over the centuries, the color of the ocean has inspired poets, artists, geographers, sailors, fishermen, and explorers. Now, one of the things that you will notice if you go away from the coast and into the deep ocean is that the water then becomes a very clear, deep blue color. And in fact, the leading physicians of the 18th and 19th and even the 20th centuries puzzled over this matter. And some of the biggest brains in the history of physics had turned their attention to this problem. John Tyndall, for example, had identified the importance of scattering in determining color. And Lord Rayleigh, famous for studying molecular scattering in the atmosphere, among other things, also looked into this problem, and he concluded that the ocean was blue because it reflected the sunlight. And it took Sir C.V. Raman, who, as Prakash mentioned in his introduction, was on his way to the UK, to carry out an experiment and reveal that if the ocean was blue, the color is intrinsic to the water and had nothing to do with the reflected light from the sun. He did this using a very simple experiment while he was on ship. And he came to some very interesting conclusions that are still standing today. He said that the blue color of the deep sea is a distinct phenomenon by itself and not merely an effect due to reflected skylight. And he said that the blue of the water is much more full and richer than that of the sky. And he also identified that scattering was necessary for this blue color, and that the scattering molecules may be the water themselves, the molecules of water themselves. In fact, it took us much longer to realize that the peculiar scattering that Raman talked about, the Raman scattering, which has a frequency shift in the scattered light, is also important if you want to meticulously and precisely calculate the color of the water. So Raman was very much behind the idea of the science of ocean color, a pioneer in this field. So the preoccupation of the of the physicists at that time was to identify why the ocean is blue. But the biologists were also interested in the problem, but they looked at it somewhat differently. They wanted to know why the color wasn't always blue. Why does it become more greenish at times? And one of these early pioneers from the biological side was a famous English scientist called William Scoresby. He started his life as a whaling captain, made a lot of money from whaling, and then retired early and became a gentleman scientist, became a member of the Royal Society of London. And he was a very talented scientist who published on a number of topics, including the Arctic oceanography and Greenland Sea, magnetism, ice crystal structure, and so on. But he also recorded in his whaling journals about the link between marine biology and ocean color. In fact, the little town of Whitby, where he comes from, is recognizes his contribution to science and to their town, and has honored him with a stout, a kind of beer that is named the Scoresby Stout. Many big scientists can claim membership in famous societies, but not many can claim that they have a stout named in his honor. I work in Plymouth, as was mentioned earlier, and in Plymouth also early biologists recognized that there is a link between the color of the water and the amount of microscopic plants present in the water called phytoplankton. And Harvey, a famous scientist from Plymouth, H.W. Harvey, was a pioneer in that he tried to standardize the color of the water and then to relate the color of the water to the abundance of phytoplankton, these microscopic organisms. Alistair Hardy, another famous scientist from Plymouth, he worked at least some of the time in Plymouth, I think, who is the inventor behind the continuous plankton recorder, was also instrumental in suggesting that we should standardize the color of the water and relate that to the biological properties of microscopic plants. And in fact, the continuous plankton recorder has been in use since 1948, and they have been recording the color of the ocean at every transect across the oceans where this instrument has been operated. And interestingly, Alistair Hardy was also a very accomplished painter and recorded the color of the water through watercolor landscapes that he prepared that are stunningly beautiful and show the color of the water in all its varied hues. Now, he also was a pioneer in remote sensing. In fact, in 1923, he used a small plane, perhaps like the one that I have shown in this photo, to study the color of the water around the southwest coast of England. And he noticed that the color changed from green brown to deep blue to green water. And his when the aircraft changed its flew across these waters, his ambition was to relate the color of the water to the fisheries of the region. And unfortunately, he was not successful in this endeavor. But in his later publications, as he written a famous book called The Open Sea, he said if these marked color changes could be directly interpreted, we may in the future find aircraft being used to make rapid surveys of surface conditions in relation to fisheries. So we have come a long way from, yes?
Shubha ma'am,
yes?
Are you changing the slides or you are on the main slide only?
I'm changing the slides.
But ma'am, we are on the first slide only.
Good grief. I think I'm on the...
you may share entire screen. I think then only it will come.
I have to do what?
You have to share entire screen.
I am on entire screen.
But we are able to see only the first slide.
Let me try stop sharing and try again.
Yes, yes.
I may need to go and get some help because everything looks okay from my side. Sorry, give me a minute, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you share screen again and stop sharing?
Okay. Actually, only first slide, it was stuck at first slide. So we are not able to see the next slides.
Okay. Can you see which?
Yes. Now you may try switching the slides. Yes. Now it is moving.
No, it's moving?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I think I will pick up. I was talking about this slide earlier.
Yes.
And is it still moving?
You may change to next one, ma'am.
Sorry?
You may change to the next slide.
The next one, yeah? Now?
Yes, now it is moving.
Okay, sorry, I'm terribly sorry about that. That was
No,
10
no,
minutes with no slides. Sorry.
no issue.
So anyway, what I was trying to say is that we have come a long way from his early studies where he suggested that remote sensing might be helpful for fisheries, and we have gone beyond aircraft to ocean color from space. And as you will see, new studies or more recent studies have indeed vindicated Alistair Hardy's aspiration that we might be able to use ocean color for fisheries applications. In fact, ocean color is a very dynamic field now, with many ocean color satellites from multiple space agencies being in operation today. But I would like to mention that ISRO and India have been pioneers in this field. This is a map showing the timeline of various ocean color sensors that have been launched since 1977. The first one was launched by NASA, but the second one was an Indo-German collaboration called MOS. And since then, ISRO has launched OCM-1 and 2, and last year it launched OCM-3. And we will see some of the results from OCM-3, or images at least, as we go along. So, as I mentioned, our preoccupation is in understanding what changes the color of the water. And we know that it can go from blue to green or turquoise as the contents of substances in the water change. We now recognize that it is most of the time, it's possible to represent this system of colors most of the time as a three-part system, and that the color of the water changes depending on the presence of phytoplankton or suspended sediments in the water, or yellow substances or dissolved organic matter. And depending on which of these substances dominate, the color of the water changes. Now, to quantify this for scientific applications, we make use of spectral variations in absorption and scattering by water and the substances present in it to calculate the ocean color. And in fact, if you make use of characteristic absorption spectra and scattering spectra of phytoplankton, water, non-algal particles such as sediment and dissolved organic matter, we can demonstrate that the color of the ocean will change from blue to green to brown to sort of reddish colors. And we can model them as a function of absorption and scattering by particles, including Raman scattering by water itself. And this method, when implemented on satellites, can capture these changes of color, especially certainly in coastal waters. These are images from OCM-3 that show the Yangtze River discharge and the Sundarbans Delta. In all this way, you see how the color changes depending on the discharge of suspended matter from the water. You can see how it's mixing with the oceanic clearer waters. But what happens when you go further out into the sea? We recognize forests on land. If you have ever been to coastal areas, we recognize that there are large algae that are attached to the bottom of the water and give the ocean in the coastal areas a green color. But if you go further out to the sea, it may look barren. It may look just blue with nothing in it. And if you were to assume that the oceans are sterile with nothing in it, you may be forgiven because you can't see what's in it because they are really microscopic. And these microscopic plants, collectively known as phytoplankton, are present in the oceans, even in the deep waters, and they are a very diverse and beautiful group of organisms. There are thousands of species of phytoplankton, and depending on how much phytoplankton are present in the water, the color can change. Even if it is invisible to the naked eye at close quarters, if you were able to see from space, the story might be different. But I would like to take a minute now to look at why phytoplankton might be important for us. As I mentioned, phytoplankton are predominantly single cell. They are microscopic. Their size goes from about 0.5, which is close to the wavelength of light itself, to close to a millimeter. They are green plants. That means that they contain chlorophyll pigments, and like green plants on land, they carry out photosynthesis. Since photosynthesis requires light, they are mostly confined to the surface sunlit layers of the ocean, and they are everywhere in the ocean with more or less abundance. And because they contain pigments, they control the color of water. Photosynthesis is a process by which plants consume carbon dioxide, and therefore, through phytoplankton, oceans participate in the planetary carbon cycle, and these phytoplankton are considered to be important players in the global carbon cycle. Their collective metabolism is enormous, about 50 gigatons of carbon per annum, which is comparable to that of all the terrestrial plants taken together. So while we recognize the importance of terrestrial plants for the health of our planet, we should give equal importance to phytoplankton and their role in consuming carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen in our planet. They are slightly heavier than water, so over time they sink and they carry the carbon they contain with them. That's another way in which they contribute to the ocean and our planetary carbon cycle. So to put this in perspective, remember I said that phytoplankton are microscopic, typically less than 1 millimeter. Compare that with the tallest trees on land, which are about 100 meters tall. So if you compare the smallest phytoplankton and the largest trees, there is a difference of about 100 million in the size of these organisms. And yet, when it comes to doing photosynthesis, they are as effective as the large plants on land. And this is because small organisms are highly metabolically active, and they turn over carbon, and their own life cycle turns over very quickly, order of days, whereas tall trees live on for maybe hundreds of years. So we now understand that the ocean color is variable, and that it is phytoplankton that are primarily responsible for changes in the color of the ocean. But we also recognize that this color, therefore, carries coded information on the amount, and we'll see also the type of phytoplankton present in the water. So if you look at an animation of what the satellite does, this is an animation from ESA. This is what you get. As the satellite passes over the ocean, it picks up the signal from different wavelengths in the visible domain. And as it goes over areas that are rich in phytoplankton, you begin to see these patterns of changes in the color, which we then quantify as changes in phytoplankton pigment or chlorophyll concentration. So from satellites then, and using ocean color technology, we can map chlorophyll distribution right across the entire globe. So we might ask, what then happens to the light that was absorbed by phytoplankton, which in turn changed the color of the water. Now, one of the pathways of the absorbed light is photosynthesis, as I mentioned. And so if you know chlorophyll, it can tell us something about what is happening with respect to photosynthesis. Now, we have to recognize that when you see a map of chlorophyll concentration like this, what we are looking at is a very basic fundamental link between our energy source, which is the sun, and the life on this planet, which is through photosynthesis by plants, and the material that provides the coupling between light and life is chlorophyll. And that is what the ocean color is designed to observe. So if phytoplankton absorbs light, then it uses that absorbed energy to produce organic material as stored energy and releases oxygen. So you can combine the satellite-derived information on the surface biomass with the light available at the sea surface, like this, and use photosynthetic models to compute marine primary production at the global scale, thanks to ocean color. But when we model primary production, it is important to recognize that we also rely on field measurements of photosynthetic rates to drive the primary production models. And this is a map of all the data that scientists have collected around the globe to look at photosynthetic parameters. So that allows us to produce climatology, for example, of the marine primary production at the global scale and also at regional and local scales. But I would like to point out that photosynthesis is not the main pathway for light absorbed by phytoplankton. Most of the light absorbed by phytoplankton goes into heating the surface layer of the ocean. And it is interesting to look at whether the rate of heating of the surface layer of the ocean would change depending on whether or not phytoplankton were present in it. In fact, based on some modeling studies, we know now that the presence of large concentrations of phytoplankton tend to localize the heating to the surface of the ocean, and that correspondingly there will be a cooling of the deeper oceans. So phytoplankton also have some role in modulating the distribution of heat in the surface layer of the ocean through their absorption properties. So if you think about the climate context, our two major interests are in understanding what controls the temperature on our planet and local variations in temperature. We want to understand how the carbon cycle might be changing, and phytoplankton are key players in both these aspects of our climate. So at a very high level, ocean color and phytoplankton are recognized as an essential climate variable. And there is a concerted effort to create a sustained time series of ocean color at multiple scales, daily, weekly, monthly, annually, and to associate these products with their uncertainties so that these products can be used in climate research to study the role of the oceans in climate, and also to monitor whether the ocean biological system is under stress from climate change or if it is changing or if they are managing to remain intact. So when you create a time series like this, you begin to be able to start looking at potential changes in chlorophyll, for example, over long time scales, and you can do this thanks to ocean color. But up to now, I have focused on chlorophyll concentration, and phytoplankton as an ensemble, as a collective group. But for many carbon cycle related problems and ecosystem related issues, there is interest in knowing how the phytoplankton community is partitioned according to different types of phytoplankton. In fact, we know that different types of phytoplankton have slightly differing optical properties. You see some absorption spectra here for different types of phytoplankton. And these can also be exploited in a remote sensing context to study not just the total chlorophyll, but also whether the chlorophyll contained in different size classes or different types of phytoplankton are changing. So this allows us, for example, to map the probability of encountering a particular type of phytoplankton known as diatoms. There's an example here of a map of a diatom in the Northwest Atlantic. And why is that of interest to us? In fact, some fisheries scientists believe that the type of fish that you might catch in a particular locality could change depending on the type of phytoplankton present in the water. Certain types of phytoplankton called flagellates may lead to sardines, and another type that we just mentioned, diatoms, may lead to anchovies and other types of fish. So fisheries modelers like to have this type of information on the type of phytoplankton present, and ocean color is opening an avenue for doing that. Another factor that is of interest to, I think I'll mention this along the way. There is also general understanding that the fish catch over large areas, and these are examples from work by Ware and colleagues. They showed that over large areas, fish catch is related to primary production. So it's not that the primary production has a role only in climate, it also is relevant for food from the sea and fish catch in particular. And this coupling between production and fish catch has been observed in different marine ecosystems. But there has also been growing understanding that the phytoplankton and their link to fisheries also depends on the timing of particular events in the phytoplankton dynamics over the annual cycle. In particular, the phenomenon known as the spring bloom of phytoplankton, where these organisms in the beginning of spring season begin to accumulate in large quantities. The work by Platt and colleagues in 2003, they were able to show that the juxtaposition of the hatching of fish larvae and the blooming of phytoplankton can determine the larval survival. And they were able to show it only because they had access to a time series of satellite ocean color data. And in fact, this, they argued, was the first time that a long-standing hypothesis on fish larval survival that was postulated more than 100 years ago could be actually tested, because without the ocean color, such algorithms could not be tested. But because of the time constraint, I have not talked about many applications, but I just wanted to note that ocean color remote sensing has many applications to fisheries. In harvest fisheries, they have been used as a tool to economize on fuel and time. Then fisheries management, information on ecosystem fluctuations and their potential effect on the future state of exploited stocks. Such things can be investigated using ocean color data. Aquaculture industry is increasingly using ocean color, for example, for determining the carrying capacity of the waters where the industry is placed, and also to study the sometimes negative impact of algal blooms on the aquaculture sites. Ocean color is also being used for protection of species at risk and to avoid threat to these species as a bycatch, and to design exclusion zones to protect species at risk. They are being used to delineate marine protected areas and to identify vulnerable marine ecosystems. And in more broadly, their ocean color data are being used to study ecosystem health and ecosystem services, such as biodiversity and various ecosystem indicators. There's also been suggestions that high seas governance and international governance strategy could make use of ocean color data to delineate ecosystems that come under the jurisdiction of this international governance, and to deal with stocks of fish that straddle multiple exclusive economic zones in the ocean that belong to different countries. In fact, India has been a leader in using ocean color in support of harvest fisheries. India, through the Indian National Center for Ocean Information System, or INCOIS, routinely delivers information on potential fishing zones, which are based on information derived from ocean color and temperature data, also from satellites. The main goal of the advisory is to increase the efficiency of fishing, not to promote overfishing. And they also suspend the information during seasons when the fish population has to be protected. There are similar contributions to the fishing community based on ocean color that are provided by Japan and the European Union through the Global Monitoring of Environment and Security, which is a European contribution to the Global Earth Observation System of systems promoted through the Group on Earth Observations, which is an international intergovernmental body. But India has been particularly good in carrying out economic benefit analysis of providing satellite-based information to guide fishing. And they did that by using experiments in which one fishing vessel would be provided with the information while another one would be without the information, and they compared the differences in the search times, increase in catch and increase in net profit, and they were able to demonstrate that the satellite technology had a significant effect on improving the economic benefits to the fishermen. Now, before I close, I also want to say that ocean color applications go even beyond fisheries, and they serve to address questions related to our general well-being and human health. For example, many infectious diseases have an origin in water. For example, the Vibrio cholerae bacteria, responsible for cholera, has a life strategy in which they spend most of their life in water. It's only occasionally that go through the human body and cause the disease in humans. And in the water, they may occur as independent, free-floating organisms, or they may occur in association with phytoplankton or other organisms living in the water. In a series of studies that we have carried out in Vembanad Lake in Kerala, in India, we saw that their association was strongest with phytoplankton relative to their presence in free floating water or in sediments or in the larger animal organisms called zooplankton. And this information we were able to use that to indicate potential threats from environmental Vibrio cholerae bacteria in the water based on chlorophyll data. And this is, I think, a growing area of research that is linked to high ambitions such as sustainable development goals and about relating water quality and human health. And we had suggested the beginning of addressing this problem, and ocean color is turning out to be an important element in this. So in conclusion then, I want to say that ocean color is an integrating discipline, and it is science in the service of, I say man, but maybe more correct these days to say humans. So ocean color is unique in that it is our only way to see at large scales into the marine ecosystems. Ships provide local information, that's important, but it cannot provide wide or global scale information. It's an integrating discipline because it touches all aspects of marine science, research, and operational. It brings physics and biology together. It brings climate, biogeochemistry, and ocean color together. It is now recognized as being important to many societal benefit areas. For example, in the activities of the group I mentioned, the group on Earth observations, to fisheries, marine diversity, UN Sustainable Development Goals, and now within the UN Ocean Decade. Now, I talked about ocean color, and but let me not lead you to think that it is a solution to all our problems. We do need complementary information to complete our knowledge about the oceans, but all the same, ocean color is an extremely versatile and cost-effective tool, and there are many important and stimulating problems that remain to be solved. India has been a pioneer in the application of ocean color data for societal benefits, particularly in the fisheries sector. Now, over the years, scientists have accomplished much in ocean color research, but there remains a great deal yet to do. And with one more nod or appreciation of the contribution of Indian scientists to this field, let me stop here and thank you for listening. And I apologize for the problems with the slides at the beginning of the talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for the highly informative and knowledgeable lecture on this particular topic. And now, Poonam ma'am, can you see if you have some list of questions in the YouTube, or we can request all the members who are joined live, they can ask in the chat box. Otherwise, I have one question to ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, recently we had this NASA launching the PACE mission.
Yes.
So how does it contributes to the overall science and what over the many years NASA and other space agencies, including ISRO, has been contributing to this science of ocean color?
Yes, it's a good question. I should have mentioned PACE, but I guess I should have mentioned PACE. Now, thank you. PACE is, as Praveen mentioned, it is a satellite that was just launched a couple of weeks ago, I guess, by NASA. And it is anticipated that it will be a game changer, as they say, because up to now, all the major ocean color satellites have been what are known as multispectral sensor defined multispectral sensors measuring ocean color. That means that you get about 10 or so wavelengths monitored through ocean color sensors. Now, PACE is different in that it is classified as a hyperspectral sensor. That means that it will measure contiguously at all the wavelengths from about 400 to 700 nanometers to measure about 300 wave bands, I think. So you are going to collect one order of magnitude more information than what has been possible in the past. So the expectation is that the additional information will help us to decrease uncertainties, improve accuracy, and also allow new products to be generated that could not be done with multispectral sensors that lacked certain information at certain bands. That's our hope. So it's a big thing.
Thanks, ma'am. And one more question from my side. Actually, ma'am, we use this ocean color and these satellites to our inland water bodies also.
Yes.
So sometimes in the lakes we do this harmful algal blooms.
Yeah.
So do we find in the ocean also, or are they phenomena limited to inland water bodies or the big lakes in the land areas?
No, these so-called harmful algal blooms are also found in the oceans, and they are a difficult topic because it's not easy to understand why they occur and what triggers their blooms. Now, if you take the particular example of the Arabian Sea, it's been recognized that a kind of harmful algal bloom called Noctiluca is growing in importance in the Arabian Sea and maybe even in the Bay of Bengal, and that they are displacing the diatoms that used to bloom more regularly in this area. So there is a real interest in the Indian Ocean rim countries and India in particular to make use of the satellite data to understand harmful algal blooms. They can occur in the open ocean, and in the Arabian Sea, they're becoming these blooms are occupying huge areas. So it's a matter of concern.
And one more, ma'am, related to environment and climate change. Actually, two parts. One part is the accelerated ice loss from the Greenland, especially. So, how this fresh water influx and also this sediment influx, which is carried by the glacier, influences the ocean dynamics, and this issue of microplastic. Is it feasible for us to see these kind of things from the space?
There are many scientists looking at satellites to identify the distribution of macroplastics, large pieces of plastic in the water. I think it's a very difficult problem because it might be possible to identify things floating at the surface, but it might be more difficult to say this is plastic or not plastic. So in general, it comes under the category of using ocean color to identify marine debris, all kinds of bad things that end up in the ocean. So that's but also there have been reports that if you use microwave sensors rather than ocean color sensors, there might be useful signal to identify plastics and so on. It's a very active area of research, and it's a very difficult area of research. So that's about plastic. Sorry, you asked me something else before that?
Yes, ma'am. About this ice sheet which is melting, especially Greenland,
okay.
and the decrease in sea ice, how it impacts the ocean and other things.
Yeah. Okay. There are different problems associated with that. Melting ice sheet can change on the land. You said Greenland ice sheet. So if all that ice after melting ends up in the water, you have a problem of sea level changing. And the other problem is that fresh water is always lighter than salt water. So when this water enters the ocean, because they are lighter, they will tend to stay at the surface, and it will change the mixing dynamics of the ocean. And if the influx of fresh water to the ocean is rich in nutrients, the new environment can favor the bloom of phytoplankton. But you have to place it in the context of all the other issues related to changing the whole environment. Now, sea ice in the ocean is also disappearing in the Arctic. They are decreasing in coverage. So this people recognize as another element that is changing high latitude marine ecosystems. With the ice disappearing earlier, phytoplankton are blooming earlier. And in some instances, we think that they are also increasing in magnitude. What the implications are, we have yet to find out. But things are changing very rapidly in the high latitudes.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Poonam, ma'am, we have some questions from online participants.
No, at present there are no questions in YouTube.
Okay. So thank you, ma'am, for your highly informative lecture, and we will be editing some of the portion in it, and the final version we will be hosting in our ISRS lecture series. There is a YouTube portal, and the final version will be available to the our members who might not have been able to join today. So we thank for your time, ma'am, and we hope our association with you will continue in the coming days and years also, so that we reach more number of people and inform them about the various progresses in the science, especially related to ocean and the related fields. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I had the opportunity to talk to you today.
Yeah,
and indeed, I hope that our association will continue.
Yeah, ma'am, and we'll be very happy to host you in person in beautiful city of Dehradun. If you can take some time whenever you are in India.
I would love to visit.
Yeah. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shall I stop sharing now? Thank you. So many problems.